So Varun, join me on the stage here. So we're going to learn about use case verticalization, sales enablement, all kind of interesting stuff over here. Drum roll. There he is.
Hey,
All right, man.
can you hear me?
Can hear you great. Awesome. Well, share your screen. Boom, there we go. Awesome. I'll get out of your way and the stage is yours.
Hey everyone, my name is Varun. I'm from Waymo. Currently, I'm a senior associate of product marketing, and for the last 2 years, I have done many things in product marketing. One of them being founding the product marketing team itself in Waymo, to building the function from 0 to 1 in APAC in Southeast Asia. And now I'm doing the same thing for the US geography of ours, right? So essentially, in this talk, I'm going to be telling you, I'm going to be sharing a sort of playbook that you can sort of implement and learn. And if you always like to sort of start building your own product marketing teams in the enterprise B2B space. So to give you a quick background, think of Waymo as a mobile CRM for financial service reps across the globe. We essentially cater to banking financial companies, not your conventional modern day fintechs that you have. These are traditional banks and insurance companies we're talking about. So the picture that you see there, you see the guy stuck in his car, you see the guy stuck in his office, you see the guy stuck in his home. That's exactly how sales rep was before Waymo ever came into the picture. In the last 2 years, we've been able to go from 5 million ARR to 12 million ARR purely because of product marketing, the way that we've sort of aligned every other function in the company for ourselves. So I'm going to quickly dive in and tell you what the 5 things I'm going to be covering tonight. One, I'm going to be covering the day zero value, essentially that when we first came into the picture, what value did we show? How do we build product marketing? How did we really say that, hey, you know what, this is what we can help you out with, this is what we can't do, right? That's one thing. Second, funnels. What parts of the funnel did we own, and why did we choose to own them versus the other parts of the funnel? Number 3, in terms of pipeline, how did we shorten the sales cycle? How did we help accelerate deals? And number 4, given that we've gone from the COVID scenario to now coming in the hybrid world and potentially going back to normalcy of sorts, how do we essentially maintain our productive schedules during this entire transition phase, right? And number 5, which I think is going to be the most important part of this presentation, is the fact that what metrics did we land upon it? Because when you talk about product marketing, metrics is something that's always in the gray area. And so let me quickly show you what the day zero value was like, right? For product marketing, whether you're in product marketing, sales enablement, any of the peripheral functions, it all comes down to tightening the messaging, tightening the positioning, and making sure everyone in the company, be it sales, marketing, customer success, product, anyone, right? They all essentially talk the same message. You can't have one person trying to sell a rocket ship when your product is probably a bicycle, right? So you've got to always get everyone to talk the same language. And there are 2 nuances to this. One, talking the same language, 1A implies what the industry leaders are talking about, what the next 5-10 years, what the lingo is going to look like in the next decade or so. And number 2, essentially, what your customers understand, what your end users understand, the kind of language. And there's always a slight, difference happening there. So you sort of have to accommodate something for everyone there, right? So if you look at these 2 pictures very closely, I'll quickly tell you why product marketing essentially has gained more importance rather, right? So if you look at the right picture, you see a guy wearing, pads, and you guys, he's trying to be a batsman, trying to be a bowler, trying to be all of them at once. And that's essentially pretty much what product marketing is like. You've got to sort of don a lot of hats, and I'll tell you how during the course of the presentation as well. And on the left, if product marketers essentially don't, don a lot of hats, if they do not own a lot of things, if they aren't extreme generalists per se, it's very difficult for a salesperson to be prepared, whether they're talking to a new prospect or whether they're trying to cross-sell or upsell something. There's always going to be a big question mark in their minds, right? So one of the things that we sort of did very early on was that when we were just transitioning from a Series Z to Series B and sort of, expanding into new geographies, trying to acquire more logos in every market, one of the things which I think is a baseline problem that every product marketer has to sort of start his career with, is the fact that the sales reps or your marketing reps or anyone in the company does not really have access to the latest and the greatest collateral all the time. Everyone's using some version of the deck, everyone's using some version of the collateral. And they always have to go on Google Drive, which is very desktop heavy to really find it out. But back in the day when travel was there, when people could sort of essentially go around the globe, they always wanted something on the go essentially. So we created something called, on the left, what you're seeing is the internal app that we built. And on the right is something you're seeing, the same extension of the internal app, but for a partner ecosystem. Let me quickly tell you exactly what both of them comprised of, right? So the left was called the GTM Assist app, which is the internal repository that we built. It was essentially all the collateral that we'd collated, and we just put them on in a wonderful cross-platform app that people could access on the go. That could be various versions of the deck, that could be various versions of the collateral that it was there, and when it was last updated, when wasn't it last updated and stuff. So essentially, it was a centralized repository that people could really access. And on the right, we sort of extended the idea of having a centralized repository into a curated learning path, because we wanted our partners essentially, resellers of the ecosystem, right? We wanted them to quickly get an idea of what the company was about, what the product was about, what the use cases were like, and start selling, on day 2 or day 3 itself, right? So we wanted to really have that sort of a thing. Then we use Glide to build it. You guys can check this out. It's called Glide Apps. Is we also, considering that we were a very small startup back in the day, we also wanted to maintain the scrappiness of being a startup, which is, hey, we don't really want to invest too much into it, but we also want to make sure that it works, and we also want to make sure that it's very effective, and it's got all the goodness in it, right? So Glide Apps is a great option if you guys want to consider it, because you can essentially build cross-platform apps right from Google Sheets itself. That's something that we've sort of personally found effective in our own journey itself, right? Moving on, what essentially did these collaterals contain, right? What exactly did we put into the app? So we came up with something called a GTM Kit, essentially, which consisted of these things that you see on the side of the screen, which is use cases, feature decks. It could be decks, documents. It could be various things. It consists of battle cards, which were again divided by markets, by verticals, and then the kind of metrics that we were trying to bring out into the battle cards were like, hey, this is the time to market, this is the total cost of ownership, this is how deeply verticalized our solution is versus someone else. So we want to really bring out the apples to oranges comparison, but in a way that, hey, look, if you're looking for a solution X, potentially that could be us. If you're not, hey, you could probably consider them. So we want to keep a very honest and transparent approach to this, and that sort of has seemed to work well in our favor. And then, of course, it consisted of case studies, which are again divided by use cases and sub-use cases as well, again divided by markets too. Then you've got your demos, and you've got field readiness kits. Now, field readiness kits, especially this part, was sort of the most important out of the entire lot. One of the reasons being, it was this one document that a sales rep could sort of take and run with in the market. It consisted of, hey, what are the jobs to be done for this particular use case, for this, for these personas that we're trying to target in that use case? What is the unique value proposition that we offered them? What are the product snapshots like? What are the quick case study snapshots like? So there's one document that anyone could just use either as a cheat sheet or could just forward it right across, right? So the entire idea of building such a breadth of documents and various types, and the depth of it as well, was essentially to give our sales and the entire sales organization Legos to sort of run with. Because let me tell you something, right? No deal is going to be identical. No customer is going to want the identical things. No customer is going to have the identical questions. And rather than them coming to you and you picking up the phone and saying that, hey, can I give you this deck by tomorrow? Can I, and sort of just managing timelines. If you give them enough Legos and just run them through how the repositories divided and what elements go into it, it becomes a lot easier for people to take and run with, but run with things by themselves. And that makes a big difference in terms of trying to improving the day in the life of a salesperson, essentially helping them quickly close deals faster, reach out to their customers a lot faster, right? And this also gave a one window picture into positioning and messaging, right? So anytime, whether it's onboarding, whether it's someone who's trying to become a subject matter expert in a certain use case, all of it was right there for someone to, essentially just look at the app, look at the various docs, and just understand at a bird's eye level that, hey, look, this is everything that we have for this particular use case, right? So what parts of the funnel did we own in that case, right? Now, I've spoken about documentation. I've spoken about how we went and operationalized the entire picture. What parts of the funnel that we own? So a lot of people say that, hey, B2B GTM is really easy, right? All you need to do is understand the ICP, understand who your customers are, where they are, get your early wins, get a couple of logos and reach your product market fit. Then figure out your MQL and SQL ratios, probably do ABM, run LinkedIn ads, figure out the cost per lead, cost per impressions, and all those things. And then eventually do optimize the top of the funnel, lower your cost of acquisition, do all of those things. But at the end of the day, it's a lot to do, right? It's a lot to do. And a lot of these things land up in the gray areas because you don't really know the correct definitions of everything else, because it's so subjective compared to your industry, compared to, a lot of other factors as well too, right? So here's what we did essentially, right? And I'm quickly giving you some little tactical advices which are very easy to implement as well, and something that can sort of give you results right from day zero itself too, right? So I'm going to be taking the example of top of the funnel stuff that we've done essentially to, help again increase in this with respect to this slide, which is increasing the probability of reaching product market fit faster, whether it's a new market or even trying to expand the existing market, right? If you're doing the entire land and expand approach. So the indicative metrics here essentially are your number of meetings, your number of demos, your average contract value. All of these are done again using BANT. Now you could be asking that, hey, these are sales metrics. How is GTM owning all these things? One of the things about GTM is that while we don't directly own any revenue numbers, we're responsible for a lot of other numbers, right? Because if we don't perform, nobody is able to perform, right? So in a way, if you sort of visualize, if you open the hood of your car, if you visualize the gear system that's there, there's always a driver gear and there's always a driven gear. So the GTM and product marketing function is a driver gear. We determine the velocity of every other function that's out there. So back in the day when events used to be a big thing, and especially if you're in the B2B space, events is where you really meet a lot of your industry peers, you interact with a lot of customers, and that's where all the magic happens. When you're in a booth, right, no matter how big your booth is, no matter how glamorous it is, thousands of people are going to come and visit your booth. And obviously, you're not going to have time to talk to all of them, right? Imagine you could just put an iPad kiosk or a phone kiosk or anything right there, and you just have quick 1 or 2 minute videos that are always playing out there, and they're divided by use cases. And let's say if I'm coming to your booth and I like your product, but I don't really have the time to talk to you, or you don't have the time to talk to me, I could quickly watch the video, fill out a form, and via a simple Zapier integration, it goes to the correct sales rep in your company itself. And with the next 2 hours, your sales rep is already talking to the prospect right there. So instead of your competitors, no matter how good they aren't striking while the iron's hot, right? You get the advantage of doing that by building very simple, tools like this. When you do this, you're automatically increasing the number of meetings, the number of demos. And when that happens, when people see the professionalism that you have in terms of being as proactive as possible and trying to solution something and trying to essentially become a trusted advisor, they're obviously going to not mind paying you 7x the price of competitors or anything else, right? So the other thing that we started doing was, and this is something that we're sort of in the process of implementing when we're doing our 0 to 1 in new markets and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure all of you guys have tried implementing, product-led growth, things like, product tour and stuff like this on your website and stuff. What happens, and what from something I've seen across, a lot of people, what they do is that your product tool is very, very simple. It's very, it's at 30,000 feet, when it's at that level, it's no good use to anyone, either your own sales rep or your inside sales rep who's trying to present this in a meeting, or even for someone who's trying to come and probably explore a sandbox environment, or even trying to go through all of these things. Because when you look at the questions, right, when you sort of position as a product marketer, when you position yourself in a conversation that you're having with your prospects or your customers, they're always going to ask that, hey, how can you solve this for me? Hey, how can you do X for me? I already have Y. Can you integrate with Z so that we can do X together? The questions are always going to be very nuanced. So when you understand the workflow and you divide the product by the workflow as you're seeing on the screen, it becomes a lot easier both for the inside sales that to sort of present this in a meeting. And even if this entire process be done async as well, it becomes a lot easier for somebody to make a decision about your product. Because let's face it, in today's world, your product might be open in one tab. Someone's trying to evaluate your product, whether it's the champion or anyone else inside the company, he's going to have 5 other tabs open with 5 other different competitors out there, right? So this is a very small optimization that you can sort of do to sort of increase sign-up. Let's say that you're trying to run ads on this thing, and then you can automatically increase sign-ups when people see that, hey, this is not just a random product, or this is a very contextual product, or right? You can, and then now here's another nuance, right? Like, let's say that, hey, a lot of people are actually coming and viewing the product tour. How do you know which one to really go back and call to, right? Because there might be a lot of people there. The entire process, idea of doing this, so that was that, hey, instead of just filling a random Google form or book a demo, something where you've got thousands of leads coming in and then qualifying it, because that results in a lot of leakages for inside salespeople in terms of time. Hey, why don't we create this contextual product tour that essentially gets only the high intent leads? But then from our side, let's add another layer. let's see that if they're able to complete a lot of tasks on it, they're able to actually explore, let's say 5 out of 10 workflows out there. Hey, this person might be really interested in the product. Let's only call them, right? Let's only filter those out, right? So that way you're also sort of adding a layer of very granular filtration that just gets you to the right person at the right time, right? Then comes your pipeline. How do we essentially nail pipeline, and then the entire deal acceleration? The only answer which I've seen has worked across, whether it's the clients that I've consulted with or the stuff that I've done here, is that it always comes down to how verticalized you are, right? How many the more you verticalize, the more you niche down to your workflows, to various things that you do, the more you integrate and become a much broader ecosystem, the more TAM that you start unlocking, because then you start connecting the larger supply chain versus just solving something for your end user, right? So there's something called a 3x3 product discovery framework, and I found that to be super useful as well. Essentially, if you just answer these 9 columns, these 9 columns and rows that are out there, this matrix that's out there, it will help you answer a lot of things. And this is something that you could probably do in a notepad or have a spreadsheet, anything that works for you, right? You always have to start with, hey, what is the real problem? Why does it need to be solved, right? And you can, if you've ever worked with a business canvas, it always comes down to either writing in bullet points or being as concise as possible in your words. So you answer the why, you answer why not. Hey, why is now the right time to really solve this problem? Is it going to be a big boom happening, or are the investors really getting active on this in this space, or is this market opening up for us? What exactly is it something to do with regulatory norms, etc.? Right? So evaluate everything out there. Why us? How we uniquely positioned? Hey, do we have the funding to actually get so many people so we can quickly probably fasten our service delivery, or probably get the team size, etc. Who else is your primary and your secondary personas? Identify that, and who not to target as well. That's one part I think that everyone needs to focus on. One of the reasons, because we often also lose a lot of time in terms of figuring out who the right person might be. So it's always good to list out that, hey, this person's are definite no's, and so that way you sort of reduce your target to like a bunch of people. It's a lot easier to verify and see if they have a problem or not. Then comes your what, and so what and now what, which is essentially that, hey, what are the various solutions? Again, this comes down to the job solution approach. That, hey, if I'm trying to solve this, do they already have a spreadsheet? If it's, I mean, because there's a saying, right, that if it's broke, don't try and fix it. Same thing as that, because it always comes down to money. And everyone, especially in the Southeast Asian markets and APAC market, everyone's trying to correlate a dollar revenue to something, right? Whether if you're trying to sell something, hey, how much is money is this going to make, or how much money is it going to save for me, right? And I think that universal truth sort of holds across all sort of all the ones essentially, right? Then comes your benefits of the solution, right? How let's say that you've got a mock-up or an app, or a nice solution out there. What are the top 5 benefits of it? Why are these benefits attractive to someone? Is it bundled in a certain way? Is it packaged in a certain way? Or are you offering at a crazy price that nobody else can probably even think of? So when you figure out all of these, this entire matrix, right? Here's what the outcome look like. Because you're better GTM kits, right? From the earlier slide that I showed you, it's more tuned to the ICP in the market. Because when you get a lot of Legos, you start figuring out what the right messaging and the right positioning and the right structure of the deck or the document will be like eventually, right? When that happens, then because there's always a tighter feedback loop, right? Because your customers as part of marketers are directly salespeople, and they directly take it to the market. So the feedback loop isn't too long, right? So once that's sorted out, SDRs, BDRs, your account executives, they're able to land messages better. They're able to qualify better. They're able to become trusted advisors, right? And because of that, they're able to expand to new accounts. They're able to land more POCs and get more RFPs through the door per quarter as well. The other latent effect that happens across with this is that you're able to also figure out what new integration that you can really have. Let's say that in this, let's say you're working a certain use case, and it comes to be that they're also considering a certain other product to solve their problem, but that product only solves one part of the entire story. Why don't you just go out and do proper webinars, probably reach out to them and do a joint go-to-market, right? A lot of these opportunities start opening up slow and so, right? Then comes in terms of productivity, right? How did we essentially stay efficient? How did we really make things work? From the online to the offline world, when there's this to and fro transitioning that's sort of happening, and I think that's going to be for quite some time, right? On the online side of things, we really didn't want to invest in a bunch of tools. We wanted to keep our toolkit as simple as what you're seeing right there. It's pretty much most of the tools that we landed up using, right? We had documentation, we had less apps, we had very less meetings. Most of it done was just async on either Slack or just not even email, I'd say, just pretty much just Slack or even WhatsApp sometimes. Then you had something called your Spocks that, hey, or your directly responsible individuals that, hey, if you're handling one project, no matter how big your team size is, the buck stops at you. It just becomes easier to sort of keep track of what's happening and what's not. And then your management culture, of course, has to be that conducive enough for all of these things to happen. So what you're seeing down there is a small snapshot of something I created on Notion itself. It's a simple Gantt chart. You could do it on spreadsheets. You could do it anywhere pretty much. A quick example of why I sort of pasted that specific thing here is that if you sort of zoom in and check that out, right? It shows the quarter, it shows the various tasks that are there, it shows the timelines of it, and also shows that, hey, what priority this is, what is the progress status of this, etc. Right? And I embedded this Notion into my signature itself. So anytime someone's trying to reach out to me, they can just check out this thing. They can see what's there on my work list and what's not, and they can quickly make a call that, hey, I want you to prioritize this instead of what we're currently doing. It becomes a lot easier for people to reach out to me as well, right? That's one thing. In the offline world, we only prioritize 4 things that you're seeing on the screen, which is whiteboarding sessions that we just met once or twice a week. We just discussed, hey, these are the use cases that we want to prioritize this quarter. These are the 500 collaterals we're trying to build. These are the stuff we're trying to do, right? We figure out a game plan in a very simple way that way. And oftentimes, when there's a strategy meeting happening, let's say that, we've got a deal that we really, really need to work on. We just meet for those things, and sometimes workshops and sometimes team get-togethers. That essentially had enable a very seamless environment between the online and the offline world, and that sort of helped to stay productive throughout. So then comes, what metrics did we land up owning, right? See, GTM strategy essentially it could be subjective, but let me put it this way, right? It's just figuring out 3 things, which is that, hey, who are your users, how are you trying to reach them, and how to scale the entire process of reaching them. I feel that GTM essentially does not really have one user per se. As you can see, GTM has a lot of customers that it really targets to, right? Think of yourself as a strategic, as a consultative function that's hired within the team. You're like the black ops team, right? You're supposed to help marketing, you're supposed to help product partners, sales, CS, everyone out there, right? So the 4 metrics that normally it comes down to is that, hey, time to market. Time to market essentially, hey, are you both directionally right, and are you also able to maintain that velocity as well? And so under those things, right, the indicative metrics could be that, hey, how are you helping learning and development onboard new people faster? How are you helping other members in the company become subject matter experts using the decks and the collaterals that you built in terms of the courses that you've curated, right? How many POCs are you able to land? How are you able to influence your top of the funnel? Is your market research on point? How quickly is your market research being updated? I mean, do you have a cadence of actually going through all the McKinsey and all the consulting peoples, or attending 100 events and just taking out notes and start collating them and stuff? How many joint ventures, how many integrations are you able to bring, right? In terms of critical deals, which you're seeing in the little green dots everywhere, every team essentially in the company is doing their own go-to-market, if you ask me, right? Marketing's always they have their own go-to-market strategy. Product probably has customer town halls. Product probably has customer newsletters that they send out frequently with new product updates, feature updates, etc. All of these things, right? It all comes down to helping them debottleneck stuff, right? Which comes down to in the moment stuff that, hey, I need a deck, I need this value proposition. Can you help me set up this webinar? Can you work on the thought leadership of this white paper, right? It comes down to all of those things. And I think this will always be dynamic, and it will always keep, happening on the go, and you can never really predict it. You can probably preemptively, just at the start of the quarter, during the quarter, you can pull out your sales force. You can figure out, hey, these are 5 use cases that we've generated a great amount of pipe on. Let's just have a cadence with all the salespeople and figure out what stuff needs to be built and what help they need, just have them ready very early on, right? That's one way to do it. But 9 out of 10 times, it's always going to be a very dynamic thing to happen. Then comes to generating net new revenue, which is that, hey, are you able to reduce the cost to deliver new POCs? Are you able to have like a sandbox environment that your pre-sales people can just go quickly, configure a few things, change a couple of names right there, and start presenting to the customers? How are you enabling your customer success teams to cross-sell and upsell things? Are you packaging your features right? Are you naming them right? Are you pricing them right? Stuff like that. Are you able to also deliver new use cases in conjunction with your customer success teams? Then comes your total building the entire tool case, your case for total ownership, right? Because no matter which part of the company is trying to go and get a customer out there. It all comes down to apple and oranges approaches, and that always comes down to various components like, hey, is your customer advocacy on point? Are your Capterra reviews and your G2 crowd ratings, are they on top? Where do you essentially sit in the Gartner Magic Quadrant? How many analysts really can go out there and vouch for you, right? Stuff like that. So this is pretty much what product marketing is, and like a quick playbook in terms of how you can start building and thinking about this function, right from Legos to building a very strong foundation that sort of everyone can sort of scale their deals and their functions upon. So if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
Certain problems with the internet connection here. In any case, I really appreciate everything you shared, man. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.